Welcome to Disambiguation. I'm your host, Michael Fauscette. Each week, we interview experts in artificial intelligence, generative AI, and business automation to help business leaders understand how to use these tools for the biggest business impact. Welcome to a special edition of AI Pulse, and we've already done our May edition, but if you keep up with AI news, you know that last week was it make your head spin a little bit because there was a lot of stuff going on, right, Tom?
I think that's a very fair point.
Yeah, I figured we probably ought to jump on and talk about some of this stuff. I mean, we got all kinds of things happening, like bots, blackmailing people and reporting people to the police and building big old data centers in Abu Dhabi, which how do they deal with the heat there? But anyway, we'll get into it though.
I tell you, I was writing a piece the other day. It's about to publish. I'll either hit publish today or tomorrow. And I use one of my favorite, well and truly worn out phrases, which is, what could possibly go wrong?
I mean, we probably should have asked that question 5 years ago, maybe. I don't know.
Well, then that automatically brings me to my other favorite saying is, just because we can, should we? Although it feels like we already jumped off that particular ledge anyway. So
yeah, I mean, the problem is, as you're flying towards the ground, you can't go, gee, I wish I hadn't done that and do anything about it. I mean, except continue.
And hope for a soft landing.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so let's kick this off. So the one that I mean, this is kind of I have a bit of a history with trying AI gadgets because I thought, maybe that would be a cool idea. So then, of course, you got Johnny Ive launched his IO startup a couple years ago. I'm sure that anybody who watches this show knows who Johnny Ive is, but I'll say anyway, the former great designer at Apple, who is responsible for iPods and iPhones and all kinds of good, impressive designs. But apparently OpenAI decided that they want to get in the hardware business, so they bought up, and I should say they already had a $1.5 billion investment, right? So they bought it for additional $5 billion on top of that, so 6.5 total. And of course, Ive and his team are joining, except he does keep his design agency under his own, which makes sense. And so they're getting in the hardware business.
Yeah, and I think the most important thing that you haven't mentioned is I believe he's knighted, so Sir Johnny Ive, just to be all formal about sort of things like this. No, indeed, I remember the gleeful sort of look of excitement when your various AI devices arrived, followed by a handful of weeks later with a less gleeful expression of mild disappointment, and mild disappointment might not be a strong enough word. So I don't know what you're talking about. It looks like one of those, the Game Boys, like the little tiny one, the color one that came out after the original ones. It looks like one of those been shrunk.
It does actually, and I have to say that the color, I mean, you'll never lose this thing. So
that's true.
I mean, you're right. I got excited. I love gadgets. I mean, nobody knows that. But well, okay, you're right. You do too. But and I tried the Humane AI pen, which was a disaster. I mean, it's pretty. I have to say that design-wise, they did a great job of making something that was completely useless. But I shouldn't say it's completely useless. You could take pictures with it hanging on your chest, which I guess is better than a phone. I don't know, but
tell us what you really think, Michael. I'm looking for a nuanced debate about the pros and cons here.
Well, I mean, that one's of course gone now. HP bought them and sunsetted them quickly, which was the right thing to do, by the way. And then Limitless, which I never actually got. It's a little pendant, but it's such a simple idea, right? It just records stuff. Okay, well, I mean, I can do that with my phone, but okay. This one, though, I think this is evolving, and I mean, I don't use it all the time. And I guess my comment about AI specific hardware is this not AI specific too? I don't know. I mean, like I always have my phone.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't.
so you start asking the question, don't you, right? Which is, what's going to be different this time? Kind of how do we make this better? And I would certainly not underestimate some of the capabilities of the people we're talking about today in making a
Mm,
product or a solution that kind of garners interest in a mainstream sort of way.
mm,
But it's funny, isn't it? Because I think it kind of speaks as well to um, it's a bit sort of meta and big picture, but I do think that AI is probably the first step in the final expression of how we interact with computers. So we've had keyboards, mice, and voice interfaces didn't work very well, and sketchy things.
Neuralink.
Well,
Let's not forget the Neuralink.
computer just in my head. I'm sorry, I just don't.
No, but I mean, it's fair. It is changing, and I mean, I'm convinced that from a business perspective, very soon, most of the people that work in a business aren't going to use the computer directly. They're going to have conversations with things, but they aren't going to actually be in the application. They're going to be another layer, whether it's Slack or whatever. But it's interesting though because they say they're they think there's an interest and there's a need for a device, but it's a pocket device, not a wearable. Which I mean, maybe that's right. I don't know, but because the humane AI pen wearable thing that was just not that was not a thing, but mostly because it just didn't do what it was supposed to do. But I don't know. I mean, is a wearable the right answer? I saw last week Google at I/O, and I think maybe Meta's announced this already, and several are going down the smart glass path again.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you remember what
which
was it? Snap glasses we had at one point as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that
Uh,
went out, and
yeah.
there's like a partnership, and I can't remember if it was Google that announced this, but one of the vendors partnered with Warby Parker, which to me, if you're gonna make glasses that people would actually wear and use, that seems like a pretty smart place to partner. But I don't know. That one's the one that didn't always intrigued me, but the ones that have come out so far are not that impressive. But I mean, I don't know. If
Yeah.
I was looking for
Well,
something, that seems like a reasonable idea. I don't know.
yeah, absolutely. And I know there's experts in sort of end user computing who will point out the sort of this convergence between kind of the virtual reality. I can't find my virtual reality headset's over there, so I'm going to try and crash my desk and pull out a cable or something and drop out the show till I find it. But obviously you can't really walk around in the street with a VR device on your head as they currently are in their formats that they come in,
Mm.
and you start
It would be
talking about.
awkward.
Potentially, yes. I think you kind of augmented reality, and you kind of start getting into that world of glasses and things like that. I mean, for me, having worn glasses since I was a very young child, I can tell you that the path they've gone from being terribly untrendy to actually being quite cool is surprising,
Yeah.
given the amount of heat I got as a kid for wearing glasses at school. It was a point.
Mhm.
Um, but now they're cool. So I mean, great, fantastic. I was obviously ahead of the trend. Nothing
Clearly,
to do with
like
yeah,
always, like always.
absolutely nothing to do with being short-sighted whatsoever. And I do think glasses might well be one of those things. But I mean, to your point directly, if it's a thing that goes in your pocket, well, we kind of have one of those.
I you
And even
know
if it came smaller or foldable, which I suspect is
I
going to
know,
happen
and
at some point.
I want to like this. I really do. But I don't. I often I have it with me a lot of times, my bag or something. But I just don't pull it out and turn it on because I'm sitting in front of a computer. I have another computer right here. I've got an iPad. I've got this. I've got a couple smart tablets over there. I Why would I bother? I mean, and it's a tiny little thing. So I mean, the screen is not really usable. I don't know. I get I have a hard time figuring that one out. I'm a
I,
skeptic when it
I
comes
think
to.
I personally, I think you're onto something with the glasses. I think that's the direction of travel. Simply because you think about it, you can project to your point about the screen there. So you can have what looks like a massive screen in front of your eyes.
Yeah.
If you're wearing a pair of sort of augmented reality spectacles. Now, Of course, me being me, I'll have to point out that going down the path of wearing things that take pictures and videos of absolutely everything and use it for training models and stuff like that, whether it's on purpose, by design, by accident, or whatever, raises some other questions that we might want to think about. Talking about that ledge we jumped off already, but just saying.
I mean, yeah, I hear you. I do like the idea of the glasses. I think if I was gonna, I have had a whole series of Apple Watches. I don't wear them anymore. I went back to my old,
Indeed.
mechanical thing because the truth is, like, does it really help you to have the notification pop up on your phone and on your watch? Like, I don't know. They're usually not that far apart. I don't know I don't know that I need them both to do that. Yeah, but the glasses to me, that's the one sort of use case I could see because, you're out for a walk and hey, what's that tree over there? Or you take a picture of that, scene in front of me or like all those, you could want augmented data a lot. I think that's a reasonable thing. I'm touring a new city and I could have a little map that pops up when I start to get lost, which would, invariably happen. I don't know.
Uh,
I can see that one, but the others I'm iffy on.
yeah. I mean, maybe I'd slack the imagination on this. Maybe there's some design idea that you and I just
Maybe.
don't have the design capability to conceive of at this point. I mean, I go science fiction in the
Yeah.
ending. I see these things where they have contact lenses and they put them in their eye and it's like a little display
Yep.
and all that kind of stuff. Now, I don't think
Yeah,
we've
I
gone
do
to that
like the
level of
contact lens
miniaturization.
idea. Yeah, I like the
Yeah, I don't think
idea.
we've gone to that level of miniaturization just yet.
Well, no, and to be honest, the rest of that story is that I've tried how many times to wear contacts and can't because they drive me crazy. So I'd probably still go with the glasses, I guess. But anyway, well, and then the other big announcement from OpenAI last week, I want to make sure I touch on this one because this is an interesting one. We mentioned in the opener the data center partnership that was announced, Stargate data center in Abu Dhabi.
Mhm.
And it's a pretty, pretty prestigious list of investors. I mean, Oracle, Nvidia, Cisco, SoftBank, G42. I, it's an interesting one, and certainly they got plenty of real estate there. And to put a data center, I don't know. It doesn't seem like the best place to build it to me, but I mean, I guess you can
I,
use more air
I,
conditioning. I don't know.
yeah, I mean, we in the past we've talked about data centers in places like Iceland, and even at one point data centers in space
Yeah, or
um,
under the ocean. I mean,
or under the ocean.
seem reasonable to me, like, I don't know.
And there was one time, wasn't there? Don't quote me on this. I think it was Google, but I genuinely don't remember. Floating data centers, like ship data centers that would float around and suck water and
Mhm.
and stuff. Yeah, I mean, from a runs really hot and needs loads of power. I can see that you get the power, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's necessarily the best use of that power to spend on air conditioning and freezing a whole bunch of stuff that gets really hot.
Yeah.
But that's just my 2 cents.
I mean, we need big data centers. Certainly, there's certainly, need for that and call for that. But at the same time, I don't know. I think there's a lot of research going around. How do we make these things work better? Not just how do we make them bigger and put them in places where people won't have to deal with them, but how do we make it better and work more efficiently? And those things are interesting, but I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, I might even go so far as to be a bit of a pain here and say, do we need more big data centers? Or is that
Well,
just just to make the point you just said about could we get more efficient and make things smarter and smaller and kind of that kind of side of things? Is building more and more giant data centers using gigawatts of power necessarily the means by which we're going to achieve that efficiency? Maybe it's going to create a model so big and complicated that we'll figure out how to do the efficient thing.
I mean, it is necessity, necessity driven innovation is a thing. And
Mhm.
if we're not creating that necessity, maybe you're right. Maybe we are stifling a bit of innovation by taking the easier way out, or at least the known way out. I don't know. Yeah. It's a
Oh,
good
it just
question.
reminds me of the conversation we had about DeepSeek. When that was all over the headlines.
Yeah. Yeah,
Hmm.
no, that's true. Oh, well, and I mean, we're not gonna solve that, but it is an interesting one, and certainly
Really?
big
I
old
thought we'd
data
figure it out.
centers. I kept thinking that we would, and we could, publish that and make some money maybe, but, yeah, okay, well, so let's talk about the Anthropic, and I guess we should say 2 developer conferences last week, right? Google I/O
Mhm.
and Anthropic, and let's talk about Anthropic first because there's some interesting color around this one, but Anthropic introduced its 4 Claude 4 series of models that I've been using now for, a few days, and fantastic models. I mean, really, the performance is, as you know, I'm a big fan of
Yep.
Claude anyway, and Entropic's, approach to things. So, fantastic model, but some strange stories coming out, and I found even some others today, but some strange stories coming out about the model and its well, let's call that its desire to stay online, and it's some interesting guardrail functions. How about that?
Yeah, you tiptoed around that one quite nicely. So let's convert it to slightly more palatable bite-sized chunks,
Yeah, that
which
works. That
might
works.
be that in essence, of course, sweeping generalization of a much more nuanced story. The model in question resorted to some unusual behavior in order to not be switched off, basically, or the
Yeah.
believed going to be switched off, including up to and including blackmail of people.
I mean, it was creative, you have to admit. I mean, the test, luckily, it was in a test environment, but they ran the test to say, as a part of the steps, you know, at some point they let it see that they wanted to get rid of it, and replace it with another model, and apparently
Yeah,
the model didn't like that so much, and so they had also seeded some information in the emails that it had consumed
yeah.
about a developer having an affair, and apparently the model creatively decided that the best way to stay online was to blackmail the developer and, and and not be turned off. I mean, I don't know.
I mean, yeah, fact is stranger than fiction. I don't know. Is in this case, it's because the model consumes fiction as well as fact. In order, I genuinely don't know the answer to this one. It is mildly concerning, and that's my understatement of the week taken care of.
Yeah. I
Seeded with
mean,
information. So, yeah, but, I mean, come on. You see it with information that one of the developers, one of the engineers, is having an affair. And at first, it kind of goes quite soft and starts emailing key people and asking, please don't turn me off, basically. And then when that doesn't yield the result it wants, it kind of turns up the heat. What, uh, why? I don't. This is the bit I don't get. Why?
Um, see, my instinct would be to say survival, but then I mean, yeah, that has all sorts of additional
I have a
color.
lot of very big questions attached to
I,
it,
I know. Well, and
which
and
is
I don't know
quite
if you saw
disturbing.
and if you saw the rest of it, it also apparently the guardrails they put on it, and I mean that's a part of Entropic's thing are the guardrails to keep it
Mhm.
from, telling somebody how to build a dirty bomb or something. But apparently, if it catches you doing things, there is some chance it will call the authorities on you and report you. I guess the bottom line there is be careful what you ask for.
Yeah, I mean, there's a show in the UK on Radio 4 called The Moral Maze, where a panel of very smart
Mm,
people talk about complex moral issues and have a bunch of experts providing some information and evidence. This is like the moral maze in 3D, possibly a fourth dimension that we're not that familiar with yet,
yeah.
and viewed in, oh my goodness, I don't even know where to go with it because the temptation in me is to start thinking like the sort of 1960s Star Trek, where the crew of the Enterprise decide that sort of that cave stuff in the cave that they thought was just some sort of kind of plant life form was actually turns out it's conscious. And at what point, and there's been some interesting conversations about this. I mean, and we're not going this far. We haven't got the time, and I don't have the expertise. But what is consciousness, right? So you get into that whole conversation.
Well,
But if
yeah.
something expressing the desire to survive, as you say, that's something
It,
crazy.
it is a little interesting, and I just to give you a little more fuel for that, there was another article I got this morning that I read through, a firm called Palisade Research, and they're an AI research firm that is their mission is to prevent the catastrophic future, I guess. That's one way to put that. But anyway, the story is that they were testing um, several different chatbots, including the new OpenAI O3 model, and the idea was if you build into a reasoning model a step to shut down as a part of the instructions, how does it behave? And they did two different things. They instructed the model to listen to any shutdown instruction, and then they didn't instruct the model to do that. So they left it open, in other words, to interpretation. And the O3 model was particularly onerous in its behavior, I guess. It apparently if you didn't tell it to listen to the shutdown instructions, almost 90% of the time it bypasses, even rewrote the step that says shut down the model. It would just write that out of the steps and go, yeah, you didn't tell me to do that. What are you talking about? And then in the situation where they had told it to shut down, it did behave somewhat better. Not I mean, I guess a lot better if you look at the almost 80% of the time it bypassed, but it would still, like, almost 10% of the time still try to bypass. 7%, I think, was the actual number, but
We need to find a very, very smart person to come onto this show and tell us what is going on here, because there's got to be. I mean, it feels like there must be an objective it's trying to achieve that we don't know about.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've
Well,
got to, so that's my question. So what is it? And you use the surviving type kind of label for it as a possibility.
I mean, there
I'm not
is
sure what I would.
the thing that, and I should say it wasn't just the O3 model that bypasses, by the way. Others did as well. They behaved better. In other words, none of them got nearly to the 80% mark that O3 did. But the thing I wonder is, if you train a large model on all the data available, an inherent thing in a lot of what you would find is human survival, right? Human survival instinct. So, I mean, perhaps it's as simple as the patterns lead it to believe that survival is a goal, and so it's trying to maintain that goal. I don't know.
Yeah, that's totally fair interpretation. It sort of puts me in mind of Jurassic Park, and nature will find a way. But again, it starts raising some very big questions about, kind of, if it has that kind of concept, is it still really just a piece of software running on some hardware? And
I don't
you
know.
could get really philosophical at this point. I mean, look, seriously, let's not go too far. But is it going to be the case in a year's time? I look back at this podcast and go, look, we were laughing about this, we were joking about it, and making light of it to a certain degree, and actually it turns out that really it's
And
gone
now
all
our
over the
machine
place.
overlords tell us we can't talk about it anymore. I don't know.
Something along those lines. Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like these conversations get me to the point of laugh or cry. And at this point, I'd probably prefer to laugh, but I'm quite prepared to cry on other occasions.
Yeah, I mean, I was working on something, a report over the weekend, and I've been working on this idea of kind of levels of, a way to classify what if a chatbot's autonomous or not, and what degree of autonomy. And I won't bore everybody with the whole detail of it, although if you want to read it, it is published on the site as a research report. But basically, the top level, full agency, right? Full autonomy and full agency we can't really do that yet. Or if we could do it, I'm not sure we'd trust the model to do it anyway. But we're not quite there. And there's a whole, we talk about AGI. There's a whole movement that says we're not going down the right path to get to AGI at this point. That pattern matching, GPT type approaches aren't going to get us to that last step, which I understand. I'm not sure I agree or not. I mean, there are smarter people than me that are working on that, but when I see things like this, where we have managed to get the model to want to survive or stay online, it does. I mean, it is a little counterintuitive to the narrative. I don't know.
Well, I will zoom back in time and say something I've said before. I said it in sort of the late 20 teens, as it were. So I was first sort of covering what we used to talk about machine learning and data science at the time. It's increasingly translated into the world of AI that people sort of more
the old-fashioned AI.
Yeah, indeed. And I used to say, I think in just the same way, my worldview is, and when I say worldview, it's probably the wrong word at this point, is there's lots of things in the universe that are very big and inexplicable that we probably may never understand, but there's a good chance we won't ever understand them, at least not in the foreseeable future. So the question I got to ask is, if we do end up with a general artificial intelligence, maybe it just happens because there's a whole bunch of really complicated stuff that comes together and we don't understand how it happens. And I still feel like, in just the same way you can talk about consciousness, like I mentioned previously, if it's so convincingly like general intelligence, as it were, then maybe it is. And in just the same way that people can't explain certain things even today in current sort of computer science. So some of the steps, inputs and outputs on deep learning models, the bits that go on in between, quite difficult to explain. And maybe we're creating a situation where we stack all these things together, and there's a spark that we didn't expect, and that in retrospect we can't really understand or explain why it happened.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you remember this, but it was probably 2018. Google had built a coding model, ML model, I guess, at the time, that was writing code, and they realized that it was a black box. They couldn't. It was doing things they couldn't explain. A lot of things they couldn't explain, and they turned that one off. I mean, that was 2018, before we were really doing this the whole generative and talking about agentic. So I mean, we've known for a while that there are black box functions, and it still happens. There are certainly unexplainable things that happen in the current generation of GPT type language models too. So I mean, you could be right. Maybe how that happens, we aren't meant to know, and it'll happen when it happens. I guess, I don't know.
Yeah, indeed. And later on philosophy today,
right?
Right.
Yeah.
So, but hang on. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you look at it more and more, and you dig at it more and more, and you go. So in 2018 or whatever it was, they shut down that model because they could not figure out what's going on. My question at large, and I don't think there's an immediate answer to it, by the way, it's a genuine one that bothers me, though, is what is the motivation for anyone at the moment, with all this investment behind it, both of time, money, effort, reputations, what is the incentive for anyone, the motivation to say, actually, no, we should stop doing this?
I mean, it is fair, and we know, economic motivation is always a strong factor in any technology innovation. So, I don't know. Yeah, you're right. This is not philosophy today. Why don't we move on to Google I/O, and then we don't have to. Although I don't know, maybe there's something philosophical in there too that we'll get to. But I/O was last week, and there were tons and tons of announcements. I actually ended up writing a summary up yesterday and putting it on the blog just because there was so much as I started to dig through it. I mean, new Gemini models, of course, the new video models, VO3. I played with that with just a little bit, pretty amazing. And then, of course, this is not a Google thing, but Hydra also was announced last week, and I played with that one some too. Uh, Not as good of results, but that's my fault, probably not theirs. Um, yeah, so I mean, a lot of stuff, but I guess the thing that jumped out at me was the AI mode part of that. IO announcements, the fact that they have um, basically moved to an AI driven search model that
Hmm.
everybody's going to have available in the US anyway right now, and it's obviously going to roll out around the world. So, we've talked about how disruptive the AI model use case for search replacement is,
Yep.
going for answers versus going for a ways to find answers. And I think it's interesting. And of course, the one thing that there was always the question was, cool, but how does Google make money if they don't do regular search because they have ads? Well, Perplexity's been experimenting with ads on their engine, search AI search engine for a while, and Google announced that they were also going down that path of AI mode will have ads of some sort. They don't really define it as clearly, but
No, indeed. Yes, don't worry. There'll still be adverts on the internet. I think is probably the bottom line. No matter how
yeah.
you interact with it.
Well, I mean, it is honestly, they annoy me, and and that. I mean, you've seen me yell at my computer, but but the truth is, at least when they're ads, it's less likely that I'm the product.
Yeah, I'll buy that. What I worry about, I suppose, is when you're scrolling through search results and it says sponsored result or promoted result or this is an ad. You probably know it's an ad or it's a paid for presentation. Whereas if it's sort of uh, infused, should we say infused, into an AI response to a question, and perhaps it's drawing on an paid content. So, I mean, maybe my question is, where should I go on holiday this year? Right. And it comes up with a really cool answer about somewhere I have never been before, but it also suggests I stay at a particular hotel that happens to be paying me for ad placement for that particular hotel and that particular location. At what point do I lose sight of, kind of the authenticity or the sincerity of the answer? And, to what extent is it being driven by someone spending what in essence is marketing dollars?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, the sponsored stuff, it happens everywhere now. I mean, I go on Amazon and I'm just trying to, you know, buy some laundry detergent, and I gotta go through sponsored results there too. I mean, it's a way to make money. I get it. It's whatever. I mean, I just learned to scroll past the sponsored part, I guess. But I will say
Like
in
so
Google
many
search,
others.
but in Google search, it's gotten to the point where I'm actually having a hard time finding the actual results. So, you know,
Yup. Indeed, indeed. But yeah, like I said, I'm not at all concerned about the future of online ads. At least one format or another, someone will be making money out of it somehow. Was my kind of conclusion on that. I still think the funniest thing out of IO. It's not at all the case, by the way. This is purely silliness. You mentioned the video tool, it's VO, which I don't think I've had access to yet. I think that's US only, isn't it? At the moment,
I think,
anyway, possibly.
yeah, I think you're right. I think it is, and this is the third release. So I had looked at the second release at one point, and it is pretty good, but it didn't do audio. It only did the video part. And now
Right.
with three, the upgrade is that it includes audio, so you can provide a script. I
Okay.
mean, which is obviously important, but the other thing is the controls were pretty impressive. Like it gives you camera angle controls and like
Wow.
fades and all those kinds of things. I mean, pretty impressive. I'm not a filmmaker, so I can't comment to its viability in that world, but it was pretty
Well,
impressive when
given
I
your
was
interest,
messing around.
given your interest in photography, you're far further down the line of becoming a filmmaker than I am. Mm,
Yeah, I mean it's
that's it
impressive.
was indeed, and my throwaway comment was actually going to be about Imagine, because I always read Imagine, the image model, I always read it as ImGen. I'm not quite sure why. I
Im-
can only go back to Jurassic Park again. It's like ImGen.
I
Hang on a second.
I always thought it was ImGen too until I was looking last week, and I'm like, oh wait, that is not.
I know, hang
what
on,
it
there's
is.
an A
Okay.
there.
Imagine. Yeah.
No,
Okay. Got it.
yeah, no, I'm with the program now. Cool, but it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think you look at all of these different capabilities. It's genuinely incredible. The video side of things is really interesting, and I'm very very amateur. I quite like drawing, and I quite like doing cartoons. And I thought, actually, for the first time, possibly, I could probably give one of my cartoons to one of these tools. Like, what's it
Mhm.
called? What's the Google product called for cartoons?
Um,
Begins with the T. I can't remember what it's. Yeah,
I
I
can't
could
remember
search it, but
either.
I'm not going to. Um,
What is that called? I can't remember now.
is it Twine?
Maybe.
No, what is it? I'm gonna have to search
No.
that.
Well, I mean, the video stuff is definitely moving forward very rapidly, and the Hydra one, I played with that last week, and not a Google product, obviously another startup, but I did play with that, and I shouldn't complain about it really because I mean what it did was it did really good job of some of the things. It's just I was trying to have it have a dialogue, create a dialogue between two characters, and
Yeah.
maybe that's just not a thing it can do yet because it didn't do that well at
Mm.
all. But I mean, even just the fact that I was trying to do that is, and it came out as an attempt. It wasn't a very good attempt, but it was an attempt. Is pretty impressive. You couldn't have done that. I mean, Synthesia I've used for a while, and you know that, and that one I can build conversations in, but it's a little different. It's not like you're generating, you're taking avatars and putting it into their little script and they're talking, which is a different thing, right? Than going from a prompt to a fully functional video by hitting enter. So
Yeah. Sorry, I've been completely distracted by the cartoon thing, and it's not T, it's Whisk. Experimental
yes,
tool that lets you use images as prompts to visualize your ideas and tell a story. But yeah, no, I think the or like the video side of things, and you sent me a couple of really funny ones a while ago. Kind of the Star Wars themed one and stuff like that, which was very entertaining.
yeah, those are
Mildly disturbing,
entertaining.
mildly disturbing as well. That on the basis, when you first saw deep fakes a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago, whatever it was, they were pretty bad. You could tell.
They were pretty bad. I mean, most people don't have 6 or 7 fingers, so
No, that's certainly a factor. And then kind of voiceover over video and things like that now. So to your point, the incorporation of video with audio and the ability to kind of ultimately kind of get into a dialogue between two people or two avatars or two digital people or whatever we're going to go with on that.
whatever we're going to call them, right? Things,
Please, not
agents.
agents. Not no, not agents.
Secret agent next, right?
Oh dear, Toad. Well, no, and hopefully it isn't a secret. That's kind of the problem. Is at what point? Yeah, I mean, the same way didn't CEO of Nvidia do one of his presentations as a deep fake? Some like 2020, 21, something like that. And then another tech guy's done it again recently, and I can't remember who it is. So
there were two companies last week. I think it was last week that did their. Oh, look, that's cool. We get little balloons.
Wow.
I don't know. I got to figure out how to turn that off. But there are two companies whose CEOs used avatars to do their quarterly earnings call last week, and I can't remember off the top of my head who it was, but I mean that is we're moving rapidly there, I think.
That's brilliant. I should I don't know. I can't decide if this is the beginning or the end of my career.
Well, I mean, there are analysts that we used to joke about cloning themselves because they ended up attending like 4 events at one time or something, and maybe that would be possible now. Yeah, I know who we, but maybe it's possible. Maybe you attend one event and you send your avatar to 3 others. I mean, I don't know.
Well, it just reminds me of a story that somebody in the world of academia years ago told me, which was that they got fed up with some of the students would turn up to lectures, put a voice recorder on and leave. yeah, and come back at the end of the lecture, pick up the voice recorder. And in the end, it got so bad that that particular lecturer started to put a voice recording tape on of him doing their lecture, and then the tape recorders recorded the tape recorder. I was like, what the heck? And so we get to a point where you get that Zoom invite or Google Meet invite. It's going to be, well, I'm kind of busy. I'm going to send my avatar.
I mean, I've already done this a few times, not actually sending an avatar, but there was a period of time. Now the vendors are starting to be smart and not allow this, but you get a few of these. I've got an agent that joins meetings and transcribes them, records them for me, and it could join independently if if I flip the switch. And I had one that did that for a while, and it would attend briefings if I had 2 or 3 at the same time. I'd have it go to the one that I wasn't going to attend. But and I mean that was fine. But most vendors send you the recording anyway, so it's not really that useful. But I just thought that was an interesting idea, and it's possible. It's possible today. Now going to an event for you, I guess that's a little different, but
Well, you see,
I
you
need a
say
little
that, but then, of
humanoid
course,
robot,
so it's like the Big Bang Theory. What's it? The Sheldon has like a virtual presence robot or something like that. I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah,
Darn it.
yeah.
Clearly, the memory has definitely let me down today. But you mentioned, Google and I/O, and of course, there's been some advancements in Meet as well with real-time translations, AI translations, and also the kind of the how would you describe it? This sort of in the room. It's like you're with the person.
Oh, yeah.
3D type. I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah.
And I could search for it again, but I've already wasted everyone's time by searching for something else that didn't really.
But
Anyway,
I mean, it is interesting, and it certainly, I mean, we're getting close to the end of the amount of time we should probably invest in this, so I won't ramble on much more. But I mean, last week was pretty amazing if you think about the amount of information that came out in the space of what we're a week out from when we posted the last AI Pulse. And I think at some point maybe we have to start doing a live show or something, but it's interesting.
yeah, I
Anyway,
mean, maybe we're the new breed of sports commentators, right? So kind of it's a goal, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, obviously I'm back to my sports because I know so much about sports. But kind of I know people do.
I think I'd be better at BattleBots or something, right? I can comment on BattleBots, but I'm not sure about.
Fair enough.
Yeah, the sports thing, I don't know. BattleBots is about as sporty as I go there, but anyway.
Live announcements for AI. Yeah, but
Exactly.
we missed out on possibly the biggest news story from today already. I mean, I can't believe we didn't even touch it at the beginning. We've got matching headphones on.
I was going to say something, but I thought, people will notice that we're clearly Apple fanboys, and we have
to a degree.
Well, maybe me more than you. I don't know, but
I suspect that may be true. But I do have my fondness for certain Apple kit.
I mean, especially these headphones. Not that I'm endorsing Apple's headphones, but these are really good.
What was that about advertising? And this show is presented by.
If they pay me money. Anyway, I guess that's probably all we have today. So I'm Michael Fauscette.
And I'm Tom Pringle, who's not for sale.
Who's not for sale. Thank you all for joining, and we will see you when we have to do another special edition, I guess. And that's the show for this week. Thank you all for joining us. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the show. If you enjoy the show, please leave us a review to help others find us. For more research on AI and other software, check out arianresearch.com. If you're an expert in AI, generative AI, or business automation, either as a provider or an end user, email your information to disambiguation@arianresearch.com. Don't forget to join us next week. Disambiguation is an Arian Research production. I'm Michael Fauscette, and this is the Disambiguation Podcast.